Plugin of the week comes from Softube. It's Equalizers, plural, and Core Vintage Equalizers. So what we have here is a new EQ by Softube, and what they've done is they've basically created a digital EQ which has dynamic capabilities, all the filter shapes that you would expect, high pass, low pass, bell curves, notch filters, all of that sort of stuff, and the ability to embed within it vintage EQs. So this would be vintage EQs from the Softube collection, including the Abbey Road active equalizer, some of the stuff that comes from the Console 1 world, American Class A, British Class A, Chandler Curve Bender, right? We'll get to the core vintage equalizer because this is the actual, the new EQ which was added in. We'll get to that in a second. Little Freak, right? Focusing EQ, passive EQ, the Summit EQF, Tone Lux EQs, the Trident, and the Tube Tech. And when you open it up here, what it does is it gives you the EQ, and the best part is that as you make boosts or attenuations, you actually see the curves happening in here, right in the frequency window. But if I decide that I wanted to put like a different kind of EQ here, I could do that as well. This would be, all different, shapes of EQ, high pass, low pass, bell curve, etc. And then from here, I can also make this an active EQ, right? And I'll explain a little bit of that or kind of dig into the details. So the net idea would be that if you're working with a vintage EQ, quite often you'll find that you need to do something in addition that needs to be tweaked. That's usually done with a digital EQ. So rather than calling up a separate instance, you can just call it right up here in Equalizers, do the adjustments that you need to make, and if you need to pop a high pass, low pass filter on top of this, then it would just fit in perfectly. And so all of the plugins operate as normal. If you actually make the purchase for this, the Equalizers plugin, it will come with the core vintage EQ. This is a new EQ that was originally designed for Console 1. It basically is, I don't know if it's like an emulation, but it's basically a parallel EQ, very much like what a Pultec does, what the Manley Massive Passive does. And so within that parallel EQ design, you get some band interaction with the other bands because it's applying the EQ within one of the bands. And then the net effect of that will create some kind of ripples and things. And these are some of the things that make the Pultec so great and also make the Manley Massive Passive very great. So it's not an emulation of either of those, but it imbues the characteristics of a parallel passive EQ design. And what we have here with this, there are two versions of it. There's the dual version, which gives you separate controls for the left and right side. And you can make mid-side mode. You can unlink the channels to do them independently. And then you have the straight core vintage EQ, which will just operate as a singular EQ. So you could use this on mono tracks or just stereo, where you know for certain that you're going to be keeping the left and right sides the same. So with the basic EQ design, let's just start here with the core EQ, and I'll just kind of leave it here because the only difference with this and the dual design is that the dual design has some additional features in here. The meters, which they say are not the most accurate things, but they're just there for reference. So don't count on that for the exactitude of it. But just to make the visual a little bit easier, just a quick thing with the core EQ, and then we'll get to some audio examples. Is that essentially what we have are three different options. If we go to the cut option, it becomes a 12 dB per octave high pass filter or low cut filter, depending upon the way you want to look at it. It can work as a bell curve EQ or as a big shelf. So a big shelf would be mimicking more along the lines of what a Pultec does. And when you open up a Pultec and you boost down at 20 hertz, if you look at the curve, right, which you could see on the Equalizers plugin, you'll see, well, that's with the Tube Tech, right? The curve will go up, like to 500 hertz to 1K. It ripples pretty far. It's a very broad Q shelf, and that's part of what makes it so musical. So you get that basic design, this here. On we have the two mid-range bands that are pretty straightforward. We have the Q control for wide and narrow. We have the frequency selection, 100 to 2K, 500 to 8K. So you have the two mid bands here with the boost attenuation plus minus 16 dB. Then you have the air band. Now the air band can be, well, the air band in some ways acts as like the sort of inverse of what you have going on with the big shelf. Again, it's a bit broad. And we have the bell curve, so you could use a bell curve, which would be a little bit more of like the high frequency adjustment on an EQP Pultec. And then the cut does a 12 dB per octave low pass filter or high cut filter, depending upon the way you look at it. So that gives you some options there. Yeah, it's pretty basic and pretty straightforward. Gives you a lot of that classic, you know, parallel passive EQ design, those characteristics. So I'm going to bypass this for a minute here, and let's just kind of open it up here and then just kind of talk about how we would do this. So within the design here, basically we have the vintage, right, which we can turn on or off or display, right, and actually bypass on or off. We can select what EQ it is that we want here. Now, one thing that you have to be aware of is if you select a TubeTech and you make some settings changes and then you want to compare it, say, to the curve bender, what you'll want to do is you want to kind of open up the right panel here and then do a copy of this over to the B panel. And that way you can sort of preserve your settings on one side, right, and then open up a different vintage EQ. Because if you switch between them, you're not going to get what you're not going to go back to the settings that you had before. That's basically the nuts and bolts of it. So you can switch back and forth. So you have the ABCD, that'll give you that. That's also helpful if you're working also with the digital EQ characteristics on top of that. Now, there's an order here. You can go modern, the modern EQ, which you could bypass or activate here. You could set the order to be vintage going into modern or modern going into vintage. Sometimes that makes no difference whatsoever. Sometimes there's some subtle variation there. And then, of course, you have the output meters here with an output gain control. So it's handy to have that panel open to the side. When we actually create an EQ, essentially you could see the filter type is shown here, so we could create a high pass EQ, and then this will open up a menu. If we solo this, depending upon when you hit the solo, it will be based on the type of EQ that you select. So if it's like a shelving EQ, it'll show you what the difference is. If it's a bell curve, it'll show you the frequencies within that bell curve boost, etc. If it's a notch filter, it will show you what you're taking away, like the basic things that you would expect. You have all the Q controls and stuff like that. You could set a basic slope here, dB per octave, and they work relatively from there. You can feed this to the stereo, each individual band, to the left, to the right, to the mid, to the side. So you have ability to kind of take any of these filters. For example, say you wanted a side filter, you'd probably do something a little bit smoother than that, and you wanted to kind of filter off low end from the sides. Fine, right? It would give you that ability to do it and leave the center channel EQ as is. And you could always add another band and do a different filter for the center. So it gives you all of those basic capabilities. If you're anywhere in the middle here, then you will get the bell curve, and it will give you like your normal boost type of thing. There's some shortcuts, like if you hold the shift key, it will lock the boost, or if you drag up and down while holding the shift, it will lock the frequency. So there's some of those things. On a Mac, if you do the command key, you can shift the bell curve, widen or narrow it. Same works with the shelving EQ. And so you have all the basic controls down here. If you turn the dynamics on, it then becomes a dynamic EQ. Essentially there's two modes here. There's on and then there's external. So if you select external, then an external key will be triggering the movement. And from there you then have the threshold, which you would expect for that particular band. The attack and release, so you could set those characteristics whatever way you need to or want to. And then there's the ratio. Now, the ratio is an interesting thing because as you work with the dynamic EQ side of it, if the ratio is towards the positive side, then what will happen is the EQ will actually push up towards the boost point. In other words, it'll start at 0 and work its way up to the boost point or the attenuation point. So when you actually put it in this mode, you're not hearing this as an EQ. What's happening is the EQ is set here, and then when it's keyed or triggered based on the content within that section, it will then move towards whatever. So then basically what this becomes is like a range control for the boost or attenuation, and then the rest of it is the dynamics that you set up with the threshold, attack, and release. If you set the ratio to the left, then the opposite happens. Now the boost or attenuation takes effect, and what happens is the signal, when keyed or triggered, will move towards the 0 line, right? So whether you're boosting or attenuating, you'll hear this attenuation, and then it will boost to neutral. So you have the two basic modes. The one that's the most common would be the one where you're basically setting this as like a range control, and then it's operating within that. So that's basically the way that the dynamics work. And again, this can be put left, right, mid, side, or into the full stereo signal. We could also get rid of a band by trashing it. We could turn it on and off here just by clicking on the on-off button. And again, we have the ability to hear the band, and we're good to go. All right, so let's see. Maybe I'll take this one, trash this one. Let's start with just kind of to get a basic idea here because of this. Because when we work with a vintage EQ, this may be like our starting point. So if we kind of think of this as, let's say that we were just kind of doing like a quick master on this. And then you could go through all the possibilities with individual tracks and things like that as well. So let's just say that we wanted to do kind of more of an air frequency kind of boost, broad Q, and then boost some low end. So let's just see what we got here. So let's say that I basically like that, but I kind of want to work a little bit, now adding like a high pass, low pass filter. And this is not an option here. Okay. So I could, continue to work here, or switch over to, to modern. I could add like another EQ, or I could just throw this in here and now kind of work to kind of tighten up the low end. So maybe I want something down here in mid 20s, high 20s. Maybe I'll do something just to kind of tighten up the top end over here, way up, toward the top end of the scale. I could resonate that a little bit. Right, so just that it's pretty much just that simple. And then if I wanted to say do a comparison of this you know, and maybe what I'm doing here is I'm taking this here and I want to compare that up against the curve bender or some other EQ, then I would just kind of call that up. Let's actually do the core vintage EQ and kind of put that in. Maybe the dual band, dual equalizer version of it here, just so we can kind of hear that a little bit. And let's see if I can make the display a little bit bigger here. Zoom in a little bit. There we go. All right, so I can maybe mimic a little bit here with this sort of resonant big shelf. And then work with the air EQ here. Right, and it's pretty much that easy, you know, and this on its own is got like a, you know, a lot of sonic character to it as well, you know. So like say I wanted to kind of shape a little bit more of like the 2K range and do kind of a broad, and this is very much like, you know, when you see the boosts or attenuations here. So here, let me just kind of eliminate that. You could see here that when I boost, it's still a pretty broad range of frequencies, right? It's generally like a broader shaping EQ, tonal shaping EQ, very much, you know, in the line of what you would get with the Pultec. You know, instead of this sort of, you know, very, you know, meticulous, you know, kind of fine tuning type of EQ. Let's do it this way, and then maybe what I'll do here is a little bit of attenuation in the low mids. The other classic characteristic of passive EQs or parallel EQs is that the boosts end up being greater than what you would normally do. Whereas with the some EQs you might be in this kind of scenario boosting like a dB, 2 dB. Here it's easy to go up to just like +5 or +8 or something, and it feels very musical. It doesn't feel like it's, you know, overly dramatic, the boosts or attenuation. But I love this EQ. It actually really captures that, you know, essential characteristic and gives you a lot more flexibility than what you might end up with a TubeTech or a Pultec EQ, just in terms of giving you those sonic characteristics, but also giving you more flexibility in terms of the shaping and options. And it's great to be able to see the actual frequency boost and attenuations, and also the added capability of just sort of having the whole modern EQ design mixed into all of this. Like, say, for example, I just kind of wanted just very quickly to just show the modern thing in action. I could actually take here. Let me double click, do a dip. Let me make this a dynamic EQ. I'll do another one here, do kind of a boost in a similar area here. Also make this a dynamic EQ so I can have this sort of working upward and here kind of downward, but just make the same basic thing, only dynamic. And let's see if I can pull this one off here. That would just be like another way to kind of show you what the dynamic EQs are and all of that. Also, it's great when you start to use some of these other unique type of EQs, like some of the Abbey Road pack stuff, where you know you're going to need additional EQ. You're just bringing that in to kind of give it a little presence or a little character or something a little bit more unique, and then you can just use the rest of the modern EQ to kind of shape around it. Really great idea. And Softube always does great stuff. Always love their releases. This is no exception. Just to note, if you already have any of these EQs and they don't show up in the Equalizers plugin, just open up the Softube Central and download the update. So there's an update that came out right along with this that will allow those EQs to connect into the Equalizer plugin. So if you already own EQs and they're not showing up in the Equalizer plugin, you have to update those as well. So that might be the one obstacle that you run into. Otherwise, great idea. I love it. Always love Softube, and this is definitely one that's worth checking out. It'll give you all the tools that you already have from Softube, and then there are a bunch of options if you want to pick up the Tube Tech or the Curve Bender or any of the other options. You can get it along with the Equalizers plugin, and then it's all nested in there together in one package price. There you have it. Plugin of the week: Softube, Equalizers, and the Core Vintage Passive EQ.